Welcome to The Space Between. On this episode, I am joined by Oliver Orlicki. Oliver is my partner in both business and life for over 20 years. Together, we discuss partnerships and their impact on the human journey, and how we navigate them with awareness and a mindset of continued growth. Join us as we connect through conversation. Welcome to The Space Between. I'm Alyson Rixner, and I am very excited to bring you my first episode with my husband and partner in all things in life, Oliver Orlicki, and really looking forward to having the listeners follow us on what we both think is a very important topic of partnerships. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So Oliver, welcome to The Space Between.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm thankful that you're here. And I have to be honest, I was nervous. Like, I'm a little nervous right now.
I'm a little nervous as well, but I'm actually excited as well. So the excitement is outweighing the nerves at this moment in time.
I agree. And I haven't been nervous yet. So see the effect you have on me?
I'm sorry I'm making you nervous. Wouldn't be the first time.
All right. So, The Space Between, we always like to kind of start with what is it? And it really is the change and transformational time that we're going through right now within the world and really within ourselves, and how that kind of impacts our view of the world and everything we've been through the last couple years. And we've never been more disconnected. You and I have had many of these conversations over the last couple of years, as we are now. And the intention for this work is connect through conversation. Hopefully we can maybe have a conversation with ourselves or someone in our life and really kind of open up and become more connected, because connection, I believe, is one of the ways that we can heal and move forward from the wild ride that we're on right now. So today we're going to talk about partnerships, and then I'm going to have Oliver introduce himself and tell us a little bit about, well, I guess tell you guys a little bit about him. So the definition of partnership we read from the Oxford Dictionary is a relationship between two people. Okay, that was it. So then I thought, okay, what about relationship? What's the definition of a relationship? And a relationship is the way in which two people, groups, or countries behave towards each other or deal with each other. I was like, that's kind of negative, but see, you found it interesting as well. So we're going to talk about both. I think partnerships and relationships are kind of intertwined, and you and I are partners in many things, which we'll get into. So why don't you tell the audience who you are?
Who I am. My name's Oliver Orlicki. I am this wonderful woman's husband for 15 years now. We've been together for 20 years. In a relationship and a partnership. I'm originally from New Jersey. I met this beautiful woman in Tampa, Florida. We migrated back north in 2010 and been in New York City since. We decided to jump into the deep end together in the business world during COVID. I know you were no longer satisfied with working for the proverbial man, so you decided that you want
work with another man.
But at least this man has a much bigger vested interest in you.
Oh, that's very true. Thank you.
And giving you the ability and platform to do this as well, I think is one of the amazing things that has brought us to this point. And I think the fact that we have partnered up has given us the proverbial open the kimono and see what's inside. And that's been an interesting ride as well. And I'm sure we'll get into that through this process.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about that.
So
you're in the mortgage business.
I am. So I'm not sure if your listeners are on or not, but I've been in the mortgage industry since 2001. I was a financial advisor. 9/11 happened. All my friends left the financial industry or the financial service industry to go to the mortgage industry, and I've been in it since. And you have been there through some very interesting up and down markets, and finally decided to, crazily enough, join me in my endeavors. And here we are 3 years into it, and we're still running pretty well. We're making it through probably one of the hardest housing markets we've ever dealt with. And I'm looking forward to coming out the other side of it and expanding and growing our side of this business. So I'm excited for it.
And we're still together.
That's a feat within its own.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. So thank you for that lovely introduction.
My pleasure.
one of the things that we highlight on the space between is narratives, right? That exist within whatever the theme that we're talking about. And a narrative is something that's out there in the collective that people are saying. It could be news media, it could be people you know. And you and I actually somewhat prepared for this last night and talked about a few of the narratives and around partnership and relationship. And I thought what was interesting was I immediately went to like the negative, right? And you said, well, wait, it's not all negative, which I think is balance, right? A big part of partnership, of what you get in partnership and relationship. So some of the narratives that we discussed is do not ever work with your partner, spouse, or family. How many people have told you that?
Millions.
So it's a common,
not really, but
it's a common, yeah,
lot.
it's something you hear a lot. People have trouble trusting, which I think we can get into as well in our conversation today. It is difficult to be open in a partnership. I think there's you hear a lot of stories of things gone wrong, right? And people get screwed and there's a lot of shadiness and backstabbing. You've had some of that yourself in your past business partnerships. And I think it's just like starting a business, right? And I had an entrepreneurship episode and this came up. Everyone thinks that like most people fail, right? Most businesses fail. A lot of partnerships fail. There's this element of failure.
Well, statistically, I think it's 95% of businesses fail.
That's actually not true.
Ah, see.
You'll have to wait for the entrepreneurship episode. That is not true.
Oh, well,
that's a narrative. That is a perfect example of what a narrative is. So the audience understands. I thought the same thing, and then I went diving, and it was I think a Forbes article, so it's a pretty legit source. And that has shifted also in the space between.
There you go.
In the last couple of years. The other thing is the sort of positives is that you have someone else to bring a new perspective. It's not just your perspective.
Right.
You get to share in that. The other thing is someone to help make decisions. I know that this could go either way, but you don't have to go it alone and to be able to collaborate. And this is important in life and in business and whatever type of partnership you have. I think it sort of transcends it. And then someone to share in the joy and the struggle.
Yeah.
What do you think is key to successful partnership?
I would say probably the number one key is being as open and trustworthy as possible. I think probably trustworthy is probably first. If you don't trust a person, whether you're going into business, life, marriage, whatever it is, if you don't have that trust, everything else after that's never going to succeed, because the minute that trust is not fulfilled or gained, there's automatic doubt and denial, and those two things are not a good recipe for a partnership. A partnership needs to have the support of each other, whether it's something you agree with or something you disagree with, something you like or don't like, something you may want to do or not want to do. And we've had several of those situations, and we come together as partners and think about not what's just best for you, but what's best for the partnership. And I think that's the key point, is because I think a lot of people go into partnerships with a big ego. And it doesn't matter whether it's a professional or personal relationship. Partnership makes you check that ego at the door. And it's that proverbial mirror. And a lot of the things that partnerships fall upon is looking at the mirror yourself and not projecting that mirror onto somebody else.
Even though I'm biased, that might be the perfect answer.
Well, thank you.
I
promised everybody out there I did not practice that.
You didn't. So I think you highlighted a couple things, right? Trust, making sure you check your ego at the door, and the mirror, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And this podcast is very energetic and spiritual in nature. And I think when it comes to trusting, there is the day-to-day, just being open. And then there's an energy that exists between people that needs to be managed and, I can't think of another word, propped up.
Maintained,
managed and maintained.
Yes.
See, partnership at work. So some of the astrological input and the spiritual input, we always like to talk about that. So there are houses in astrology, and we'll talk a lot more about astrological things on the podcast. But the 7th house in astrology is referred to as the house of balance, which I love because I personally think that life is all about balance, and the space between is a balance in itself, right?
Yes.
A rebalancing, a recalibrating of sorts. And it governs our relationships and partnerships, romantic relationships, marriages, and dedicated partnerships of all types are included in this house. I have a very active 7th house. You do not.
Not surprised.
So there is balance there. I also think it's very interesting when people think that they need to have the perfect chart to match their partner. And life is not like that, folks. It's not how it works.
I don't think my chart's anywhere near perfect for our partnership, but
No, and I think that's the beauty of it.
I would tend to agree.
Because, one of the things I think from an energetic perspective, and you talked about the mirror, right? Which I really want to talk about. I think that could be a whole pod in itself, right? But the balance that you need to find within the partnership and the lessons that exist, right? And I believe, and I think a lot of people believe as well, that we have all come back here for a purpose, and that our soul is really living to learn the lessons that we've laid out for ourselves. And through our relationship, both as partners in life and romance and business, and we literally are partners in everything, it has been one of the most challenging lessons of my life. Would you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can prepare you for any sort of partnership, to be honest with you. I think you can talk to as many people as you want who've gone through it, whether they're married, whether they own a business together, or doesn't matter, whatever it is. Everybody's got their unique own experience. So yes, you could take that experience and say, okay, that may or may not happen to us, but then you're projecting something that may or may not be true. And I do believe that in order for it to really, for you to take that leap of faith, you've got to, again, it goes back to the trust. You've got to trust that partner from the onset. And if the trust is there and established on the beginning, the rest will ultimately, may take longer than you would like, fall into place at some point in time.
So let's talk about that trust. It wasn't easy for you.
Are we talking professional or are we talking personal?
I mean, I think we're talking about all of it. I know it makes it more challenging, but trust was, I'm somebody that I'm a bit naive in this. And it used to be something that I didn't like about myself. And now I've just owned it because I'm getting older and I'm just accepting so much more of who I really am. I'm a little naive. And it many times in my life, a bit too trusting. And at many times, way too trusting. And you come from sort of the opposite place where trust was never really just given, right? It had to sort of be earned. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but I think at some point trust is always earned. And I think
that's true.
What you said is got a lot of truth to it. But at the same time, I think if you want to, trust is something that's got to be earned, but it can be given as well. Yeah. And, if you ask me that question, personally, I never thought I would be married. I never thought I would be in a long-term relationship. I was always the guy who dated for like 4 or 5 years. Serial dater, break up, have 6 months of fun, and then go back in a long dating relationship.
Yeah, you're Mr. Relationship.
Yeah, so
I was not.
When I came out of my last one, and in my early 20s before I met you, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to be this proverbial playboy, and I'm never going to get married, and I'm going to, grow old and be by myself, and that's what I was I was content with that. But then ultimately I met you, and that changed my thought and opinions immediately. So, yeah. So I think you made me realize I had to earn that trust from you. And I don't think it was given to me either. I definitely had to earn it with you.
That's true. I think in the relationship side of partnership, everyone's bringing baggage. Nothing is easy. Relationships are not easy. Breakups, heartbreaks, traumas, violent things that happen to people. Sure. It's very difficult. Yeah. And you are right. I do think I was highly skeptical coming into us meeting. And I think it's important for the audience to know we met when I was very young. I was 23. You were, oh, here I go with math, 27?
I'm not that much older, but yeah, 27.
My math sucks, by the way. You will learn this about me.
Yes.
And we were young. We were kids. And I think we were obviously very physically and sexually attracted to each other, but we had so much fun together.
Yeah.
I would say like the first, however many years was just fun. We were party kids. We'd go out and party and experiment with things, wink, wink, and have a really good time. And we were into it. We were into the same music. But that's not what keeps you together for 20 years.
No, absolutely not. Because you got to, I think we both reinvented ourselves in the 20 plus years we've been together. Actually, this year is our 20th year officially together.
Yeah,
as a couple. You have to reinvent yourself. But, I think I agree with 100%. When we met, we were young and we were having a great time. And I think it's morphed into a lot of things. And we had very different goals and objectives when we met. And as we started to learn more and more about each other, we found out a lot of our goals and objectives were actually the same, which brought us here. So,
and I also think it was, we grew up together this way, right? It's sort of in parallel, because what we wanted then and what we cared about then is vastly different than what we cared about 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Someone said 7 years is the marker. I heard someone say that like psychologically every 7 years you have a rebirth in ways. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. And, my dream was to come to New York City. And you were like, okay, fine, I'll just, blow up my whole life and go with you, because you knew I wasn't staying in Florida. It wasn't what I wanted. And I think the other thing that we haven't mentioned in any type of partnership is the sacrifices that you have to make.
Yeah.
What do they say? A compromise is two people that are neither one are satisfied.
Yeah, that's a very good say. That's a true statement, actually. Yeah.
Because in a compromise,
I know
the person's getting what they want.
Yeah, I've heard that before, but no, I haven't heard that in a while. That's actually a very true statement.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of sacrifices that are made. And yeah, it's when I think about the timeline and just how much has changed, I feel very lucky that we can sit here. And we're going to talk about, it's not a bed of roses. It's definitely not been easy. But we have a lot of things to be grateful for with each other.
100%.
So some of the things that we talked about yesterday, we were sort of chatting about partnerships and relationships, were some of the things that you mentioned before. And I'd like to kind of turn it over to you now in the space between, right? How do you feel about partnerships and relationships? I think it's changed a lot for you.
I think you can probably put them both together. I look at a partnership as bringing two forces together to equal one stronger force, right? If you're two separate forces, and there's plenty of people out there that are doing things great on their own and they want to be on their own, or they own a business on their own, or they live their life on their own. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's certainly something to say about that. You have the freedom and autonomy to do what you want, not have to answer to somebody. And then there's partnership where, you decide to join forces with another person, and the sacrifices you spoke about earlier, you make a lot of sacrifices. You give up some of your freedoms. You give up some of those things. But you also adapt and change for that partner's well-being, right? You want to make sure that you are satisfying what they're looking for in the partnership as well. But at the same time, you can't lose focus of what your vision and goal is of the partnership either. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times, a lot of partnerships start and end, unfortunately, probably much sooner than they want to, because those things weren't talked about in advance. Or maybe it's not they weren't talked about in advance, they just weren't thought about in advance. And as time progressed forward, it became a theme or a narrative that they had to deal with. And either you deal with it collectively as a partnership, or you do it on your own. And if you do it on your own without the partner's, other side, it's typically not a recipe for success.
Very true. And in the space between, I would say one of the things that has changed a lot in the last couple years is our conversations and communication.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we were talking about this the other day. Like, I can't remember the last time we watched TV that wasn't a sporting event together. And we used to follow so much like TV, whether it was reality TV or the news cycle or you name it. And now that we don't, we're like not forced. We actually enjoy talking more about what it is that we each want and how we want it, not only for ourselves, but collectively as well. And, I look at something like this with what you're doing. This is something you wanted for a while, but collectively we're able to get you to this place. And I think that's that's a good partnership right there is sacrificing certain things for the other's good and vice versa. And when the chips are down, you got to be there for them. And when the chips are down, sometimes you got to let it be and let them figure out their own things. And, I think that's one of the hardest things about a partnership is so many people rely on each other too often.
Yeah, it's a weird balance.
Yeah, versus
you can swing into either way.
Yeah.
Like having the open communication is amazing, but then it can become a crutch.
Yeah, of course. And then, and I'm sure you'll get into this, you get into codependency and so forth. So
recovering codependent. I've said this before. So this is nothing that's new. But I would say in the space between, the communication has been big.
100%. And I think, you try your hardest to communicate as openly, as freely as possible, but there's also sometimes you over communicate or you over express, and that may not be the best thing either. I mean, you're talking to a guy here who was clammed up like a turtle in a shell, and now I'm more emotional, and I probably cried more in the past 3 years than I have in my entire lifetime. And it's a good thing. And it's because I'm starting to realize that being present and feeling those emotions and not trying to hide them and run away from them is something that is going to help you move onward and forward. Not only by yourself, but in that partnership.
Absolutely. And I want to say again, if I haven't said before, thank you so much for how supportive you've been and just the fact that we're here and get to do this. And
it's my honor.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Every single day.
I love you. So I think with the space between, it's important to highlight some of the things that we've broken individually that has then transferred, if that's the right word, into our collective union and partnership. So you have struggled with addiction probably as long as you can remember.
Yeah.
And I had very deep codependency, which my wonderful therapist will say is inextricably linked. So it wasn't surprising that we found each other.
No, it is not.
He was needing me, and I was happy to live my life for you and make you my whole life so that I didn't have to focus on my stuff and myself. And I think in the space between, we've taken our individual work and healing and transformation, again, this very transformative time with your addiction and with my codependency. How would you say, and I know this is a difficult question, but how would you say really looking at your addiction and all of the work that you're doing around it has impacted our partnership?
I mean, of course, my first reaction would be negatively, right? It's like,
well, I'm saying working on it. Like now you're actually working on it.
Oh, it's been night and day. I mean, when it doesn't matter what you're addicted to, whether it's drugs, alcohol, money, sex, shopping, food, whatever your vice is, you turn to those things to hide truly who you are and your emotions and your feelings. And in order for a partnership to work, a person's got to be in tune with the other person's feelings and so forth. But at the same time, you can't expect that person to come in, swoop in, and save the day. And for a long time, I used to think that was the case. I did.
Well, I wanted to.
And you were happy to do it, and I was happy to accept it.
It worked really well for a while until it crashed and burned.
But I think, more recently than not, you've stopped that, or at least have pulled back significantly from it, and it's really forced me to look at my issues and what I was dealing with. And that is one of the reasons why I work every day to overcome those addictions, is to be more present with you, to be more present with myself, to be more present with our partnership, not only personally, but professionally as well now. So I think it's a very big stepping stone. And, I think you were probably scared to pull that codependency back, but at the same time, I think if it would have continued, it would have just made my addiction issues worse, because it's easy to mask those things. And I think it would have really not given me the freedom to fight my demons from the past to be able to be where I am now.
And I would say the biggest part of that in when I reflect on you is your presence. And, we've been going through a tough time. People that are closest to us know what's been happening. It's difficult to talk about, which I think is why we were both a little nervous to have this conversation. But in the spirit of being open and the spirit of connection, we need to talk about this. I didn't feel as though I was a priority because it felt like overnight that a switch kind of flipped, but I was happy to live, like I said, my life for you and make you my whole life. And this is something that, my mother has struggled with, and she's very open about it too. And it's hard. But once I don't wake up, I guess is maybe the way I would say it. You kind of wake up to this part of yourself. You realize that it's a road to nowhere because you consistently just don't feel full. You're not really living your life. You're living life for someone else. And I think very quickly, I realized that I was feeling less than. I wasn't a priority in your life. And I never had that with you. It was just something we didn't do. And when you have two people that are on their individual paths and they're healing, it's very, very, very difficult to have those conversations and to find new ways to connect. As your life is changing so rapidly, we're all going through such rapid change, and then you have these relationships and partnerships in your life. I know for me, I felt like I was hanging on to the back of a bus. It was like, whoa. And it seemed like it happened really quickly. I don't know if you would agree with that. I don't know that we actually ever talked about this. It's good that it's coming up now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, it was like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It was.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that ride's always going to come to an end somewhere, somehow. And you don't want to be on the wrong side of how it ends. And I think most people, we family-wise both have our sets of issues with family-wise. And I think you see so many, whether it's partners in business or professionally or personally, they're two ships passing at night.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a lot. And, I told you this last night, and it's a cheesy analogy, but I want to be on the island with you with the coconut, drawing the word help in the ground, making sure you're there on that island with me versus me being on one island and you being on the other island. And I think that takes a lot of work. And, I've seen friends, I've seen family, I've seen business partnerships fall apart because people were always just never on that same page together. And I think it's easier to ignore it and it's easier to kind of put on the blinders than it is to face it. And I think the people that do face it, like we're doing now and in the past and probably will in the future,
yeah, for sure,
just compounds it and makes that relationship stronger. And, that's how I think the relationship relates to the partnership.
Yeah, that's good. I can visualize that. The other thing, and yeah, everything that you just said is the fact that we can actually sit here. Like I'm just having this moment where it's like, wow, we have come so far that we can sit in front of these microphones and like talk about this shit. It's crazy. Yeah. It actually just hit me. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy.
3 years ago, I would have said you're out of your mind.
You're out of your mind. That's your new saying, which I love. So let's talk about mirrors. And I really want this to be its own episode. So I don't want to, belabor it, but it is so, so, so important to talk about the concept of mirroring in relationship and partnership, because from an energetic perspective and from, dare I say, spiritual, we need to come up with a new word, perspective, everything in your life is happening for you, not to you. And I'm not going to digress on that. There's a lot of sort of pieces to that. But when it comes to the person that you choose to be with you in your life, especially the way we've chosen, we do everything, right? Work, all of it, which is also, I think we should have a business partnership podcast because it's different. We're kind of highlighting both of them.
Yeah.
But when you do something and I'm very triggered by it, what we've come to realize together and separately is that is something that I need to look at.
Yeah.
So if you piss me off and I'm, and I know I'm not easy. I'll admit that on this podcast. I'm not easy either. It is for me. It's a lesson that I need to learn. And that's been really big for us because now when we argue, it's like, oh, mirror, mirror. Ah. How would you talk about the concept of mirroring?
It's you either play the victim or you take accountability. I don't really think there's much in between. I'm sure people can argue that, and I think that
I agree with you.
I think there's circumstances where you truly are a victim in something. You had zero, you were just in an unfortunate place, time,
right.
Whatever happened, and
But we're not talking about that.
But we're not talking about that, right?
We're talking about things of your own accord. We're not talking about things that are tragic that happen to people.
Exactly.
And I hate when people say, oh, you just need to be accountable for everything. No, sometimes you don't have to be accountable for the shit that happens to you in your life. You have to deal with it. And yes, there's a lesson there, but that, being like, oh, we're just going to be super spiritual and everything is like my own thing and I have to. No, the world is hard. Okay. And we talk about that. I talk about this with my friends all the time. It's like, no, that's bullshit too. But the accountability piece is when I think what you're saying is.
Well, I mean, I think
when it's of your own.
Yeah.
doing.
I mean, I look in a mirror, I used to be the person, I'm the first to admit it. I was egotistical. I was selfish and I didn't think my proverbial shit ever stunk. Right. Mm-hmm. And I told you this, one of the sexiest things I thought about you was you were one of the first women to say no to me, which
shocks me, by the way.
Not in that sense, but in other senses. But anyways, I digress. When somebody challenges you and when somebody makes you look at inside, you have brought me, and for full, I'm not the most religious person, but I found the spiritual side of things. I started digging into it because of you. Yeah. Books like The Untethered Soul and Judgment Detox and things like that have really helped me realize that when you're present and a situation happens, you can play the victim. You can say to yourself, oh, this is happening to me because of this, this, and this. Or you can just say, it's happening to me for a reason. This is going to help me grow to be a better version of my future self. Mm-hmm. And a better version of my future self benefits you because it means that things are better for both of us.
Absolutely.
I think when you look in a mirror, I'm faced with that personally and professionally literally almost every single day of my life.
Oh yeah, it's constant. Once you figure this out, it just doesn't stop.
And when you sit and really, I just started meditating about 90 days ago and it's been actually pretty, like, I'm a person that I'm probably am diagnosed with ADHD, probably on that spectrum of things.
Yeah.
For me to sit silent for 11, 12 minutes is pretty incredible. But one of the things I've learned about is you sit there in silence and you can't control what the mind does or how it reflects on what's going on. And so many people go into an exercise and meditation and think that they can control what's going to happen. And sometimes I sit there and I fall asleep. Sometimes I sit there and rehash what happened 10 minutes ago, 10 days ago, 10 years ago. What the mirror does, I think, is when you project something on somebody else, if you actually take a step back and after you have that blow up and everybody's reactionary and everybody out there, you've had an argument with your spouse or your partner or your business partner or your personal life, you look back at what happened and I would probably guess 99.99% of the times it's something that you have either done or you have felt that you're doing wrong. And when you look in that mirror, you realize, wait a minute, it's not really about what Alyson did 20 minutes ago. It's about the way I reacted to what she did because I had that same circumstance happen to me and this is what my past trauma is and this is the way I'm used to reacting to it instead of changing that and realizing there needs to be a different approach. And there needs to be a different circumstance, right? There needs to be a different result.
Yeah.
And if you're going to continue to do the same thing over and over again, what is that? The definition of insanity.
Of insanity.
Yeah. So,
and we're all guilty of that. I don't understand why things aren't changing. Well,
having somebody that was codependent, I could rely on you to right my ship most of the time. I didn't really have to do much of anything, whether it was planning for travel or going to whatever it was. But and you had a hard time letting that go, because there's a control factor to that. So when you have when you let go of control on your side and you let control of your side, when you stare into a mirror and you look at yourself in the mirror and it's hard sometimes to look at, other times you're like, yeah, I'm looking good. Things look great. The hair looks good. The eyes look good, whatever it is. There's other times you're like, you're just miserable with yourself. Yeah. That's looking in the mirror. But I think you have to go through that, whether it's good or bad, to help you grow as a person. And I think for me, more often than not, after something happens, I see the way I react, I see the result of what that action created, and then I kind of try to reflect on it. And again, 99.99% of the times, it's not that I did something wrong. It's just the way that I reacted in that moment in time.
Yeah.
And instead of just taking it, instead of having the pendulum to sit here, the pendulum swings to one extreme or to the other without ever sitting in that middle.
The space between.
The space between. There you go.
It comes up all the time.
There you go.
That was really impactful. I think you mentioned a couple things, the trauma that we bring into situations. And then there's staring at yourself in the mirror, whether that's actual or, whatever. But there's also, just to be clear, the concept of whoever comes into your life can be a mirror. And I believe just for me, that the people closest to me are the biggest mirrors in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And will shine a light on the things you have to deal with in order to grow, and will shine a light on the lessons that your soul came here to learn. And it is hard. It is so hard. And there's times with this work that we're both in that I've certainly felt, and I think you would agree, like, are we going to make it through this? It's been hard.
Yeah, I think
it's been so hard.
But I also think it's human nature to think that you may not, right?
Right.
And that's the difficult part. But then I think you dig deep to figure out why you're in it in the first place, why you're willing to sacrifice, and why you're willing to go through, whether it's the pain, the joy, the tears, the laughter, to be part of something collectively and as a partner. Because I look back now, I mean, and I just say this to you, I couldn't imagine things without you. And I mean that personally and professionally. And that, to me, I take that into consideration every day. I say the favorite part of my days is waking up next to you and going to bed next to you. I'm not trying to win people over by saying that. It's just truly how I feel. But,
You're being very open.
At the same time, the mirror for me, we had a situation with a client that happened the other day, and I sat with you and I said, what do I need to learn from this?
Yeah.
And I immediately jumped in on the victim. I immediately that I did all this hard work. I did all this.
And entitlement.
Yeah, they didn't know what I went through to do this. And at the same time, on the flip side, the result of that person making that decision was you don't know what happened to them.
Yeah.
And you got to think to yourself, there's a reason why they reacted the way they did, and you reacted the way you did. And, it comes down to, is it money trauma? Is it this trauma? Is it that? Whatever it is that led you to that point in time, it makes it difficult for you to wrap your head around it. And I think when you take some time after that situation happens to reflect back on it is really where that mirror starts to shine. And it's funny because you said something about, the people you're closest with. I think you try to not mirror yourself, but mirror those people that you surround yourself with, whether it's family, whether it's mentors.
Especially when you're younger.
Yeah, whether it's mentors, whether it's friends.
Yeah.
And and especially now more than ever, you look at social media and everybody paints this portrait of everything so rosy and that their mirror is this great, fabulous life.
Yeah, everything's great on Instagram.
Oh yeah, but then you hear something on the news, this person's being sued for this or cheating for that or insider trading or whatever it is. Everything's not as rosy and everything's not as sweet as you think it is. And I think when you take that into consideration and you compartmentalize it, you realize that every action you take every single day, you're going to face that mirror.
Yeah. And everyone is struggling.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about that with Daryl on the space between. We walk in each other's shoes. We are all under the same sky. We're all in this together. And facing those mirrors is incredibly challenging. But I think on the other side, and we're not quite on the other side, I don't think. We're still really in it.
Yeah.
I know there is another side, and that's really what the space between is all about. But I believe that on the other side is going to be a much, much, much deeper understanding and a respect and a love for who we came here to be.
Yeah. And I think, you and I are fortunate. We've been blessed with a lot of amazing things in our lives. We're healthy. We have each other. We are not a place of traumatic backdrop or tragedy really affecting our lives, that big of a tragedy.
People have really hard things they deal with.
And I think I underappreciate that a lot. And for me, things that I'm realizing now is that things aren't nearly as bad as you always think they are while you're in it. And I do think things will get better. And I think as you get older, you also realize you learn.
Yeah.
Like, when you're young, you jump off the cliff with no wings and hope to grow them on the way down and pray that you don't hit the ground before those wings start growing. And now it's now that you've done it and it's happened and you've tried to repeat it. Hey, listen, sometimes things you gotta take a swing if you want to try and see what happens. If you're not willing to take a swing, you'll never know the result.
Yeah. No, that's very well stated. And I think, we always like to end the podcast with where we hope partnerships and relationships will be in the future. And I know for me, I'll go first. I think the more that everyone can really focus on their path and focus on the action steps that they need to take based on why they came back. And I'm going to do an episode on purpose, and I think that'll be really, really good for people to learn about, that partnerships and relationships will become much more fulfilling and deeper connections, deeper love, deeper trust, deeper respect, all of those things, because we'll be walking in the shoes of the person that we came here to be. Because I can't be a partner to you if I'm not living a life that is good for me. You cannot come into a partnership if you are broken, and I was so broken when I met you. And I've spent my life putting the pieces back together. And I feel like just now in my 40s, I'm starting to see those pieces be made into something.
So do you think it's more of just experiences that have gotten you to that conclusion? You said, where do you see partnerships moving forward, right? Was your question?
Yeah. And I think they'll be more fulfilling. I think as people begin to put the pieces together and begin to walk their path, when you're in your path, your purpose, you're in your power. When you're in your power, that's when you can really give.
Yeah. 100%.
And I feel for both of us that we haven't been able to really give to the other person. If you're picking up all the shit that you can't deal with, I'm just pushing that on you. You're doing the same thing to me. We're in this circular hell of sorts. And that's what's hard. There's lack of communication, there's trauma, there's triggers, there's reactions, there's all these things that happen. My hope for the future is that as more people, kind of dig into this, that it can be deeper, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
What about you? Where do you see this going in the future? Or hope? What's your hope?
Are you talking about partnerships in general?
Yeah, or however you want to think about it.
I mean, I think now more than ever, so many more things are just out there, right? Like, we are especially in the age of where things weren't as broadcasted, right? Like everything you do now is televised. I know it sounds cheesy, but you and I used to be able to go out at night and not have to worry about somebody putting us on Instagram.
Thank God.
As bad of a dancer as I am, I used to go out and dance. Nobody would make fun of me, Well, my friends would, but nobody could film it and make it, viral.
It wasn't real, but it was.
Make it viral on TikTok, so I got 10,000 people criticizing the way I did the Roger Rabbit. But, I see partnerships as being, I think, more exposed now than ever. And I think, especially if something doesn't go right, you start finger pointing. And then when you start finger pointing, that's when the mudslinging starts happening. And that's where things fall to shit. My hope for partnerships is anybody that's looking to get in one, whether it's personally or professionally, be open. You don't have to set all your expectations up front, but I think you have to have some sort of clear, defined common goal at the end of it that you're going to work towards. And it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be a very curvy, mountainous, windy, up and down roller coaster ride. Yeah. But ultimately, you want to get off the ride together holding hands or lockstep together and celebrating that ride, because I think so many people don't appreciate the ride that they're on until it's over.
Ooh, that's really profound.
And I think once the ride's over, you start looking back and wishing maybe this was different or that was different, instead of just saying, you know what, this is where this ride has taken us and we're here now. And I think that's, for me, where partnerships are. I think you and I don't think our story's written, not even close, to be honest with you. I look at our, I'm 47 years old now, and I talk about this a lot with people, and I feel like I've missed so much in my life. And I'm like, the average male is alive till 80 some years old. And I'm like, that's 40 years away. Like, there's so much ahead of us.
Yeah, let's not go there. How everyone just the aging of, oh, your life is over. No, listen, it is just beginning. I can't wait to get older.
Yeah.
I feel so grateful.
And you and I, it's just you and I. We don't have children. And we decided to do this business thing to have something that we did collectively. And here we are 3 years later in one of the toughest markets in our career, and we're figuring it out every day how to navigate through it. But it's led us to sitting at this table talking about something that you're passionate about and something that, I'm passionate about. And if I can help one person or 10 people or 1,000 people, so be it.
Yeah, and I think, and that's something that we didn't even mention with the business, being together almost 20 years and me leaving my corporate career and going into business with you, we didn't set proper expectations. That's something I wouldn't do again. We didn't. We just kind of did it. And, we had some conversations about it, but there really wasn't this, I think we would handle it very differently now.
Well, it comes back
3
to
years later.
the codependency. I thought you would come in and wave your magic wand and fix everything. And, here we are.
I wanted to.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in the cards.
But you know what? You have fixed a lot of things. And here we are now, still alive to tell the tale. Yeah.
And I think people ask me, especially because once they meet us, they're like, oh, wow, you guys are interesting. People find us interesting for whatever reason. We are interesting. I tell you that much. But people say to me, what's your secret? There are no secrets. But I think working together, when I tell people what it's like, it is like the closet in your home that you throw everything into and you shut the door, right? That's how our relationship was before. We were willing and able to deal with only so much. And whatever we didn't deal with went into the closet. And then the minute I joined into a business with you, we pulled all of the shit out of the closet and we had to look at it and deal with it. And I think you're saying similar to what I'm saying, we're just kind of coming at it from two different angles, is that being open, unearthing, figuring out what we both need, what we both want, what is in tandem, what is at odds, connecting through conversation. That is the whole point of why I started the Space Between. And this is coming to me too, thank you for being my prototype, because it's been tough and we're still here. And I appreciate that you've given me that space to be able to figure that out for me and for us to do it together.
Well, that means a lot to me. I appreciate that. I love you for that.
I love you too. So anything else that we haven't covered? I mean, our time is basically up. It goes quick, doesn't it?
It does go quick. It wasn't nearly as stressful as I thought it was going to be.
No, just like anything in life, right? You're more nervous. It's like putting your shoes on to go to the gym. Just put your damn shoes on. It'll be okay.
I just wanted to say how proud I am of what you're doing. And I'm excited for the world to hear this, because I think it's exactly what's needed right now. And I think so many people can benefit, not from just this episode, but what you have to say and the amazing guests you're going to have, and from now moving forward. And I wish you nothing but success and love, and I'll be here step by step to watch it grow, and I'm excited, and hopefully you'll have me back at some point in time.
Of course I'll have you back. Thank you, honey. I appreciate that. That's so nice. I love you. So Oliver, thank you for being on, and we'll do this again for sure. And I'm going to leave Oliver's Instagram handle in the show notes. And you actually have an interesting Instagram. We have our business Instagram, which we can leave as well for people if they want to check that out. And I just want to say thank you to our audience for spending some time in the Space Between. Really looking forward to bringing future episodes and more interesting folks on the podcast. And remember to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow the show on your podcast app. We'll see you soon in the Space Between. Thank you so much for joining us in the Space Between. We hope this conversation sparked connection for you. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who will find value. And make sure to tune into our next episode as we continue the journey into the core themes of our lives. We'll see you again in the Space Between.